Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Artfare's Thursday weekly uh, virtual live studio visit / interview. I'm here today with Alex Paik. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Carolina Wheat. I'm a curator here at Artfare, and we're excited to keep admitting folks here and to talk to Alex today, who has a very active studio practice as well as a curatorial practice, whereas not only does he make incredible work and installations, he's also the director at Tiger Strikes Asteroid. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're also, you're also director at Trestle Gallery, correct?
Yeah.
You worked curating the satellite art fair for a handful of years, and you have a nice exhibition record, and we're just really happy to have you and talk all things art, curatorial, gallery-esque, a pandemic, all the things.
All the things. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Where are you right now?
Right now, I am at my mother-in-law's in Macungie, Pennsylvania. We kind of ran away here in June.
Mm-hmm.
We had our second daughter at the end of March, and we just needed a little bit more help after 2 months, so we came here.
Definitely. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so you're kind of hanging out in Pennsylvania then. I understand you've been Brooklyn based for many years. However, you and your wife have kind of made this step to potentially move to LA soon, correct?
Yeah, so we just signed a lease on a house in South Pasadena, so we're going to be heading out there very soon.
Wow, wonderful. Soon meaning like next week, in October?
I mean, the lease starts October 1st, so very, very, very soon. I might have to start driving next week because we have a dog and a cat, and they can't fly. So I'm on pet transportation duty, and then I think my wife will fly with the kids.
Very cool. Very cool. And so during the pandemic, that you were a little bit in New York City during the start of the lockdown. Were you going to the studio? Were you making work, or what was your main motivation during that time?
I mean, I think we pulled my oldest daughter out of school. Was it March 12th, whatever that Thursday was, and we shut down the galleries pretty soon after before they kind of mandated that lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the last time that I was in my studio.
Okay.
And my wife was like 9.4 months pregnant at that time, right? So she was getting ready to have the baby. So so we were just at home getting ready to trying to figure out what was going to happen. There was a point where they had said that so we had hired a doula to help with the birth, and she wasn't going to be allowed to be there because they were restricting how many people could go, which was annoying, but it's fine. And then there was a point where they had said that even like the partner couldn't be there. So then we were like, it was pretty upsetting to think about like my wife would be there giving birth by herself, and like maybe I'd be on like FaceTime or something with her. So the early days of the lockdown, we were really just like kind of stressing about our daughter's birth. Luckily, like everything went okay. I was allowed to be there in the end.
That's good.
And everything went as well as it could. And then like after that, it was just like newborn baby time. Plus like a bored 7-year-old daughter also at home. So honestly, I haven't really been able to work very much. Just like trying to like find little pockets of like 5 or 10 minutes here or there.
Right, you're creating a human being, molding and shaping this young mind and body and spirit. So then clearly that precluded you from going to the studio and kind of the last time you were there. But did you move your practice then into your apartment, and were you kind of like readdressing, reinventing some of your work in order to meet your surroundings?
Right. Yeah. Well, I brought a bunch of stuff home, like a bunch of like sort of like smaller things that I could work on at home, and so I've been working on mostly smaller pieces, you know, very slowly. But it's been interesting because I've been able to like explore these like sort of open-ended sculptures that I had been wanting to make for a while. Um, and like, so this has been a good opportunity to to work on those. I mean, honestly, I feel like I haven't been very productive, which is fine, but I feel like this time for me has been like really like kind of a time of like reflecting and like a time of like kind of clarifying like who I want to be as an artist and as a curator and like as a human in this world. You
Yeah.
know, just so in that sense, I feel like it has been really like productive in that way for me. Because I mean, like I'm usually just like sitting around holding a baby and like you know reading on my phone or something. I can't really do much, you know, when I'm holding her.
Right. Well, yeah, you work with what you got, you know, and so your work, as I've seen in real life, I mean, it's very expansive. It's very detail oriented, yet it also kind of takes over spaces in this really delicate way. And I appreciate the work so much as it's and I don't know, I think maybe you have a piece that you could share with us right now, just the kind of the smaller works that you're working on and the more sculptural than the
Yeah.
I know the work feels it's relief on the wall and it does have the sculptural aspect when it's you know installed, but these newer works are much more voluminous.
Yeah, so I'm making, I mean, it'll be a little weird to see, but here's one. So I'm making these kind of like open-ended sculptures now. You know, and the idea is that the viewer, the audience can kind of like change them
Hmm.
um, or like you know, mold them or change the orientation however they want. You know, so they're heavily influenced by the Alicia Clark pieces, those steel sculptures that are also kind of like geometric and like hinged at certain points.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I've been having a lot of fun with these. A couple of them just got shipped out to be in a show in South Carolina. So I'm curious to see how that works out when they're like kind of like in a gallery context as opposed to just like on my kitchen table.
Yeah, well, you just mentioned that you wanted the viewer or the participants to handle the work.
Yeah,
That's different. How are you going to invite folks to feel comfortable to handle their paper? Is that correct? Or their
yeah,
cardstock,
they're paper, yeah, like watercolor paper.
watercolor paper?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't, you know, I don't want to have like a giant sign or anything because that's little like kind of like dumb looking. I don't know. Maybe like I don't know. Maybe there can be some sort of like just like some sort of like suggestion, you know, with like maybe there's two white gloves there, or
Hmm.
maybe like whoever's sitting at the gallery could tell people to that they can you know like handle them.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean I'm not sure, but that's to be seen.
Yeah, and so those are going to be standalone, likely on a pedestal or something like this. But you're not going to go down there and do an installation, are you?
No, I mean originally I was supposed to do an installation, but you know we're being pretty strict in terms of like our exposure, just because like there's not really that much data about like you know less than 1 year olds who like whose immune systems aren't really like mature yet.
Yeah.
So we're trying to stay like very conservative and strict about that. So I won't be traveling down there. So I'm sending these smaller pieces instead.
Hmm. Well, more power to you, and better safe than sorry,
Yeah.
I think. Um, so, do you have some images that actually that you could share with all of us of some of the work installed, so we get an idea of what coming from these newer sculpture works to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I'll be happy to share. I'll do the share screen. Now go over here. Yeah, so these are some of my installations. Let me find one that we can do this one. So you know, so these installations are all made out of cut and folded paper. They're essentially like strips of paper, and I will make sort of like the same shape over and over again. So there'll be like sort of like, you know, maybe like 200 or 300 of these pieces, individual pieces. And then when I'm offered a wall, I'll just kind of just go in and they'll be improvised every time. So there's no real final static form. So this is the same piece, but installed or performed, or whatever words you want to use, a few different times. So this was at Praxis New York last year. This was at a space in Baltimore. This was at Trestle Gallery.
Oh, so, you know, I didn't realize that about your work, Alex, that it's kind of an intuitive mapping opposed to a planned composition.
Right. Yeah, so that's kind of where that, you know, so that idea of like having this sort of like open-ended or like sort of flexible structure that's happening in the sort of the smaller sculpture work that I just showed, you know, that's very much like an interest that's coming from these installations.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, I yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just asking quickly, the color that you see and the inside of the form, are those painted or is that also color paper that you're using?
Oh yeah, so I just did this. Yeah, so they're painted on the inside. So it's gouache, and sometimes there's colored pencil. And then the color you see on the wall is just like the reflected color
Yeah, the
bounces off
website.
the sides and hits the walls.
Yeah, it reminds me of the minimalist modernist Joe Bear.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I always appreciated that work, and I think this play on light and this refractive color is always so inviting to my eyes, but also just it's illusionary, which I really appreciate. But it's just like color wavelengths, like it's light.
Yeah, it's like it's I mean it seems like kind of like a hokey trick, but you know, I really like the idea that like, you know, like 90% of what you're actually seeing is not like physically there. You know what I mean? Like the material is just like maybe like 10% of what you can actually see, because you're just, you know, you're seeing them from the side and they're just these tiny strips of paper. But then what's actually like material or visible is actually nothing, you know. And then it's like, and then once the piece comes down, then it's like gone forever. So there's this idea of like this sort of material transformation, or this sort of temporary relationship between, not only between the shapes within the piece, but also like this temporary relationship between the piece and the wall, and like the light hitting it.
Yeah, yeah, it's rather so simple yet can be so profound. This that which is not there. I appreciate that idea in the work.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the work is really, it's you know, it's about creating these structures for relationships, and you know, what's primarily at the forefront is our sort of more formal qualities, like the relationships between the geometric shapes, and the relationships, the color relationships that happen between each other, and between the wall and the you know, the wall and the painted strips of paper. You know, but then I like how it can kind of like poetically allude to you know, these sort of other structures, right? Like you know, like both like internally, you could talk about like how you know, you're constantly like rearranging yourself or like code switching depending on the social context, right? And you're not necessarily performing, it's still you, but you're just sort of rearranging these pieces of yourself and constantly like um, trying to, you know, like match the circumstances or whatever. But then also like kind of on like on a more like larger scale, like the idea of these sort of temporary relationships, and the possibility of people, of like institutions, of coming together temporarily to do something, hopefully for the good,
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so, so I don't know if it's necessarily like the work's about that, but I mean, I've been thinking about that a lot more recently, and this sort of idea of like, what is possible, like, like there's this sort of like kind of like optimistic idea of possibility in the work, because it never takes a final form. So then it's like, well, what's going to happen next time? Maybe maybe there'll be some sort of surprise or something will happen, and that's like kind of like our great hope, right? As a society, it's like, well, maybe like for once we won't fuck it up this time, and like we'll somehow like come together and like do something good. Yeah, it's not looking likely, but still the possibility's there.
We could stay optimistic, I suppose. What we hope. Um, yeah, that the metaphor within society, I appreciate as well. There's this interdependence
Right.
amongst society, and certainly now, whether we're thinking about masks and wearing masks for yourself and for others, versus the the person that stands by themselves, not thinking of others.
Mm-hmm.
I actually heard something recently just on that topic about uh, a professor moved back from Beijing, and he was talking about how uh, folks over here in the US, they think that people in China are like, some sort of military faction who's keeping them in their homes, and they're obeying quarantine because they have to, because the law says they have to. Yet he very kindly explained, within the society, folks police each other actually, and are wearing the mask for each other. And I keep thinking about this very fact while we struggle to understand the the politicalization of the mask, but anyway, I think that the work really speaks to that collective understanding of the togetherness, and all for one.
Yeah. Well, it's like, I mean, it's also like a cultural difference. Like America is like super individualistic, and like a lot of East Asian cultures are very Confucian, and
Yes.
the family unit or the nation, or you're always thinking about everybody else, and the detriment is sometimes that kind of like doesn't allow for too much self-expression, but
Yeah.
and then also like uh, many parts of Asia have this sort of pandemic reflex already, because they have these structures in place because they had to deal with SARS.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them already had that infrastructure, whereas the US had minimal infrastructure, if any, and then the current guy in office got rid of whatever
Right.
minimal structure we had. So here we are.
Report that all the U.S. military intelligence knew about 4 years
Yeah.
ago. That's what that was. Really fascinating, really wonderful work. And they come in so many variations. You're playing with many different shapes. And so I also value when you said, well, here's an iteration, or a performance in relationship to its installation, as your hand as an artist is on it, yet the work is performing in this way. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, I think that mostly comes from, I'll throw some images up again. I think that mostly comes from kind of my sort of upbringing in music. So I played like violin very seriously for a long time. And, you know, uh, I think a lot of, I don't think the music, I don't think the work is about music,
Right.
but I think that music and elements of music and the attributes of music really affected my aesthetics, if that's the right word.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that's the first time I ever learned how to think critically and like interact with any sort of like artwork in a serious way. That's a very long way of going about answering your question. But yeah, so the idea is like you could hear the same piece over and over again, but even if it's the same performer, like say, I mean, and you could take your pick of band or song or whatever, but depending on the context, you know, each performance, it's the same piece, but each performance will be slightly different. You know, maybe even like the audio, depending on how you feel, you'll find something new in that piece when you listen to it, or like yeah, or like perhaps the performer will be trying something new out with the piece. So I like that idea that, you know, this work can never really, it's always like moving forward somehow, and it's never just like there and that's it, you know. It's like, it's not this like kind of you know, it's like, how like egotistical is it to be like, I'm done with this painting and it's going to last forever and it will live in a museum, you know. It's very like kind of like Western way of thinking about what art can be. So I like the idea that these things like do kind of have a lifespan, and like, you know, they're just they're slowly kind of decaying as they get installed more and more. Especially those little sculptures that I've been working on, like those are just gonna be completely destroyed. You know, every time you move them, something's gonna get dented or break, and you know, that's part of the work, I think.
I appreciate that impermanence. That's, I mean, and the material alone and as paper, you know, it's not the most steadfast of materials. And then you're using watercolor and gouache and such too, which I suppose exposed to light over long periods of time will also fade.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you've had a handful of iterations of this in different galleries in New York and internationally and domestically. Yet you're also, so nice. It's just like how some disappear, you know, so many different angles to even shoot the work.
Yeah, and like this part right here is like, it's, I mean, it's like hard to see. I mean, the work is hard to see like through JPEGs, unfortunately, but like these parts here is where I'm like physically pulling them away from the wall by about an inch. And so like they kind of like blur, like the camera doesn't really know where to focus.
Yeah.
And if you see them in person, it's a really kind of interesting effect. You know, like the camera has like, it's monocular, it has one lens, and then, you know, we have binocular vision. So like, it's kind of like this weird sort of buzzing effect that happens when you look at it, that you know, I can't really replicate, unfortunately, through photography.
Right. Yeah, you just documentation. You need to take like 4 or 5 images just to really capture the movement that the eyes or the body make walking near or around and taking the pieces in. So here we are seeing such an active practice. It's very detailed, you know, a lot of handiwork and otherwise, but intellectually you're also a curator. And for how many years have you been doing Tiger Strike's Asteroid, Alex?
11. Yeah, we started 2009. Yeah, so 11 years. It's
Wow.
enough where I have to subtract.
How did that all get started? I mean, it's a very interesting model. I would love to hear more about it because you've got certainly one in New York, you've got one in Philadelphia, LA, and
Chicago.
okay,
And then we have a group in Greenville, South Carolina as well.
right.
Yeah, so I mean, so very short version of that, and I'm happy to expand on whatever you want, is that, you know, out of grad school, I was in Philly, and, you know, me and my friends, we just wanted to start like a space. So we started like a small exhibition space there. And then because of my wife's work, we ended up moving up to New York a few years after we opened TSA in Philly. And, you know, I wanted to start another space there because I saw how valuable it was to be able to sort of have agency in the art world, and to also like be able to create my own community through that. And you know, when we were talking about it, we were just saying like, oh, what should we name it? And it's like, what if we just call it Tiger Strikes Asteroid as well, or we'll call it TSA instead. Haha, that'll be funny. And so we kind of did that. And then shortly after, like some friends wanted to start spaces and they wanted to call it Tiger Strikes Asteroid as well, in LA and Chicago. And that was kind of the moment. It's like, kind of, we looked around and kind of shrugged, and it's like, I guess this is what we're doing. And, you know, we're still like trying to figure out like what it even means, and like what's the point of like having multiple locations. So that's the short answer.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, I mean, you can feel you have a long reach. However, do you have meetings, or is everyone kind of on the same page with stuff? Do you have to make decisions together, or is it kind of, you know, individual businesses?
Yeah, so yes and no.
Mm.
So we try to operate in like small like teams or groups. So for instance, like there's like kind of like the local groups, and they're kind of in charge of the programming and the sort of running the day-to-day stuff of the spaces. And you know, the other sites don't really have a say over like the programming at any other site. So in that sense, they're pretty independent. We do have like other sort of like breakout teams, or like we have like quarterly meetings with like the co-directors from each of the sites, just to be like, okay, like here's what's going on, and just sort of like try to brainstorm and troubleshoot things, just so we're not all like reinventing the wheel, like so we can like share our resources,
Mm-hmm.
share our failures and successes, and like learn from that. And then, you know, occasionally we do have some sort of like other projects where they'll just be like, hey, you know, we're working on this exchange with this other group, like who wants to be on this like committee or team or whatever you want to call it. And people will just sign up from all, you know, from any of the locations. So it's a little, I don't know, it's a little, sometimes it feels a little too loosey goosey, but it ends up like it works out somehow. Like, you know, like it's not on fire yet. So like, I don't know, I guess it's kind of working.
Well, what is kind of the format then if you wanted to go to a fair? Like, do you pool your resources together, and you know, TSA goes as the overarching gallery in different locations, and then you all, you know, curate the booth or something together. Have you guys done fairs?
We did a couple fairs. We we tried to do some fairs, and those are mostly like local things where we didn't really like work on things together. We did do one fair where we all like kind of like, you know, we kind of came up with a structure. Like we voted on like a theme, and then each site got to put forward like two
Mhm.
artists or something like that. But you know,
Mhm.
honestly, for us, like the fair model never really felt right for us. The only time it ever felt right was
Mhm.
when we got to make up our own. When we did the artist run at Satellite in Miami that first year when it was in the abandoned hotel. Um, that was kind of the only sort of fair experience that really felt right, um, as an organization, I feel like. So I'm not sure like how we would even like, you know, do something like Nada or Untitled or something like that.
Right, right. And I mean, TSA is, it's, you're showing work from more undiscovered artists a lot of times, or the work is really fresh and it feels youthful a lot of times, not always. You know, there's a certain amount of mid-career artists I know that you've also presented in different iterations that I've seen. But how, or what is the mission of TSA's practice? It's a curatorial vision. Like, what are you exactly looking for when you want to exhibit an artist?
I mean, I think the overall vision is to kind of have no vision.
Mhm.
Um, you know, like we really don't want to have like any sort of house style. Um, and so, you know, so like kind of the way that most of the sites work is that we'll just kind of like assign slots. So like, let's say like I'll have September, and then you would have October, and somebody else would have November, and you can do like kind of whatever you want with that slot. So instead of having to worry about like what other people will think about what you're doing, like you have free reign to like do whatever you want with that slot, or you could give it to somebody that you trust.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is so that we can really have like a diverse perspective. You know what I mean? Like everybody can really like make their voice feel like their voice has equal value.
Yes.
Now the problem with that is that is when like our organization, the membership is overwhelmingly white, because then that sort of perpetuates a lot of what is wrong with the art world, and the world at large. So we're really trying to, I mean, we've set like tangible benchmarks that we want to meet in terms of like new members going forward. So we're trying to be really mindful of whose voices we're trying to prioritize and bring into the group, so that they can also have this sort of like equal footing within
Yes.
the organization.
Well, that's outstanding. And how many members do you have currently?
I don't know, like 50 or something like that.
Wow.
I don't know the exact number. It's about 10% on average.
Sure. And what does it take to become a member of TSA?
I don't know, like be able to like answer emails, so you have to like everybody pays member dues, um, which is generally like between $60 and $75 a month depending on the site. And right now, unfortunately, we don't have like an open call for membership. Right now it's usually like friends of friends or people that we've worked with in some capacity.
Okay.
And really that's because like there's so much trust involved. Like we can't, like it's like we have like 5 separate bank accounts and like everybody has the passwords to everything, and like
Mm-hmm.
like we could get really like screwed over because
Yeah.
like we're like all like kind of doing it part-time. There's nobody really like, I mean, like I try to oversee everything, but I just I can't. Ultimately you have to be like, okay, I just trust these guys to be
Right.
able to do it. So because of that, it's been really important for us to try to add people that we've had a working relationship with before we ask them to be members. And even then, sometimes we've had a lot of nightmare scenarios with members that we thought would be great, but ended up not being
Really?
great.
Really? Like what happened?
Just like like people like do their show and then just like peace out, or like like they just they just like won't show up for their sittings, or like just will not respond to anything, and
Oh,
like like just like not be a part of it at
yeah.
all. And then so that labor that they're not doing gets shouldered by the rest of the group, and
Mm.
then it's not a great situation.
Yeah. Well, it's disrespectful. It sounds like they were in it for the show and then bounced when all the dirty work had to
Yeah. I mean,
happen.
yeah.
um, yeah, I've seen some really great shows at TSA. A handful of friends, other artists I was discovered at TSA, just through my own kind of radar. And what you guys were doing over the quarantine, I was so interested in and really enjoying the PDF.
Oh,
Can you talk a little bit about that initiative?
yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, so TSA PDF is they're basically printable exhibitions. And this was like the second or third week of lockdown, and we were already so sick of like virtual viewing rooms. So we were trying to figure out a way that we could sort of bring something physical back into the world.
Yeah.
And so there are these printable exhibitions. They're they're curated, and you can pay whatever you want for that, for the PDF, and you'll get the press release and all the images, and then the idea is you can print them out and you just install them wherever you want. And so again, it's like it's fun because it sort of goes against that. When you see a show in a gallery, like the way it's hung is the way it's hung, and that's how it's going to be, right? But this is cool because then people that download it, they can sort of like they can find new connections and new relationships between the pieces, and uh, they they can like hang them wherever they want. It's been interesting to track like the weirdness of the install shots. Like I think at the beginning, like people were like, you know, putting them like on a blank wall, like very traditional style, like a gallery situation. And then as time's gone on, like, you know, people install them outside, or like people like install them on their fridge, or like on their staircase in the stairwell. One I saw that was really great was they just like threw them all on top of their coffee table. And like, so they sent us a picture with all the images just like on the table with like their coffee mug and stuff like that. I thought that was great. So it's been cool to see like how people are interacting with it in that way. And right now, half of the money goes to Artist Relief, which is giving out grants to artists affected by the pandemic. And then the other half is split evenly amongst the artists that participate.
Well, that's outstanding. And how you've had a couple iterations of PDF too. Weren't there 2 or 3 maybe?
I think we're on our 10th one already.
10. How did I miss 7 of those? Wow. And so how many artists were included in each PDF packet?
It really varies. Some have like 4 or 5, and some have had like 20 or so. So it really depends on the person who's curating it.
Oh, right on. And then how much was it? Like each?
You pay whatever you want.
Oh,
so people have paid 10 cents and people have paid like $100. So it's like really whatever you want.
It's it's a knock it out of the ballpark idea. I really appreciated that physicality, as you mentioned, you know, already sick of the viewing rooms and just kind of the glorified website, if you ask me.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you want to be in this fair? What an honor. Yes, I'd love to be in this fair. And it's just, you just build a website for me, and I push, you know. Anyway, we'll see what the future of fairs are, and the future of actually getting out and getting into spaces. I recently went to some of my first openings this past week, and people are safe, people are cool, but it does, you know, you have to wait to go in and get your time. And I really appreciate sitting with the work for a while. So I felt a little, gosh, I probably should leave. Other people want to see this work. But when it's like, for instance, I went to this Ward Shelley and Doug Paulson show that's at Pierogi right now, and it's a lot to take in. It's a lot of writing and a lot of sculpture, and just it's Ward Shelley, so it's, you know, it's this mind mapping that's just so incredible. But you know, being in there, I wanted at least a half hour, and can't really get that unless, you know, go during the day at other times, and that seems to be working out well. Folks are making appointments to go see art again, which is a relief. So with the PDF, I'm wondering, are you archiving all of these, or is there a way, for instance, are they limited editions, or are they kind of, you know, say for instance, if I wanted to buy the first one right now, would I still be able to? Or
yeah, I mean, in theory, you're supposed to be able to. I was supposed to like make individual links for all of them, but I haven't yet. But yeah, I mean, so right now it's been like when you pay for one, you get the one that's currently on view. So they're on view for about like 2.5 weeks, or 2 weeks at a time.
oh, okay.
But yeah, but they're all, you know, they're all on the website right now. And I would like to eventually make like a zine or some sort of like book, like with like, you know, like an anthology of maybe the first like 20 or so. But you know, like that's kind of like, I have to like worry about like getting across the country first before I think about that.
I see a book in your future. I think that, yeah, it would be really great endeavor. I think it would be, I would buy it.
Cool. I'm gonna hold you to that.
Yeah, I will. Well, and I mean, and with TSA, I mean, you've worked with a lot of artists, right? It's just like, I mean, it's been so many years and different iterations, and I'm wondering, like, what was one of your favorite shows that TSA has put together or curated?
Well, I mean, I already talked about this, but I think my favorite project was that artist run fair in
Oh,
Miami.
right. Hmm.
Um, I feel like that really like encapsulated like and clarified for me like what we were and weren't as an organization. So very briefly, we were able to get this abandoned hotel, and we invited a bunch of artist-run spaces from around the world to take over a hotel room, and they could make it like whatever they wanted. So most of them were like these sort of immersive installations. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, that to me was really like kind of the essence, is like sort of like giving artists like the agency to do what they want and giving them like this platform that they would not have had. So there's a lot of this was in Miami during Art Basel Week, so this was like a huge platform for a lot of these artist-run
Yeah.
spaces. And then also like just trusting them to do whatever they wanted with the space, and not really like sort of like policing that with some sort of like overarching curatorial vision, you know.
Mhm.
So it's really like, yeah. So I think for me that was, um, at least personally, that was the most like kind of like impactful experience in terms of thinking about the mission of the organization.
Absolutely. I mean, TSA is an artist-run space. What is the or do you have any thoughts on the value of for an artist working with an artist-run space versus a gallery?
Um,
Or
like
they're galleries. I know artist-run spaces are galleries, but I'm curious if you know. It's just thinking about artists, envisioning themselves, manifesting themselves, showing work in a gallery space that may be more of a commercial endeavor. Um, just maybe some thoughts that you have about an artist working with an artist run space versus a commercial run gallery.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if, I mean, unfortunately, like it's not that, a lot of artist-run spaces I feel like are just trying to be like crappy versions of commercial galleries, like they're just like putting on shows that look exactly like commercial gallery shows. So so sometimes there's not that much of a distinction. It's just that there's a lower budget and no existing collector base. Um, I don't know. I feel like artist-run spaces, they can be like really like weird and wacky and alternative. Even if they do have like white walls, they still offer this sort of like energy that you can't really necessarily always get at some of the commercial galleries. And we've had artists that were pretty successful commercially, but we kind of like we were able to show work that they could not show at some, or we were able to like execute projects, or let them um, let them like execute a vision that they would not be able to at a commercial space, because we give them that like trust and that agency to do what they want, and like we don't really have to worry about um, the bottom line or anything like that. So sometimes I think that there can be a little more freedom in artist-run spaces. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Taking the space is able to take a risk, opposed to really having to provide, a show that is a saleable show.
Right. Well, it's not even a risk because there's no risk. Like we're not risking anything. Like it's like it'll still be the same no matter what. So, you know what I mean? Like, so it's not even like that's not even like a metric. Like in some of these spaces, which is exciting.
Yes, so true. In an artist run space doesn't need to be a white wall gallery, as yes, you mentioned, it could be a medicine cabinet or a
Right.
bathroom or whatever. You got a
Yeah.
good website, you get an artist run space there.
Yeah.
Um, but so TSA is not solely dependent on sales in order to create the work that you do, curatorial work practice that you do. Is it a not for profit, or how are you? It's like you're a collective, so you're like all kind of chipping in. I'm
Yeah.
curious.
So on paper we are a nonprofit company. So we are officially a nonprofit. We're kind of doing it a little bit wrong. Like we don't have like a board. I mean, we have a board on paper because you're legally supposed to, but it's just like 4 of us that just like sign the paperwork. But we don't have like a board that like, you know, like gives us money and like fundraises for us. We have been trying to get more grants recently. So we're able to recently prioritize funding a grant writer for this past year. So hopefully that will start to pay off. You know, we do have people that sort of like donate to us like on a monthly basis, like through Patreon. And then we also have membership dues,
Okay.
you know, which used to like barely cover rent, but now it, you know, it doesn't cover rent at all. But yeah, so, you know, from all that, we're able to sort of scrape by. I mean, we don't have like anything like really fancy or anything, and all the spaces are pretty bare bones. So, you know, that's one thing that we can't offer that sometimes fancier spaces can. Like we like don't have that much equipment. We can't, you know, we can offer a little bit for production of things, but not that much.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's definitely one disadvantage that we have.
That's true. So many artists come in with expectations for putting the show together, for production expenses, especially, you know.
I remember we had this artist from Germany, and you know, so she flew in and she came in and she's like, "So when's the technician getting here?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, I'm the technician. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you think we are?" I thought that was so funny. I mean, that's also reflective of like the funding structure for arts organizations in Europe versus here.
Of course.
It's funny.
I have a quick aside about something versus U.S. and American, excuse me, and European artists. Was one time I was very interested in showing a particular artist, and they asked, "What would be my fee?"
Yeah.
It's, you know, and so sorry, it's just showing your work.
Yeah.
You know, the give or take here. But the fact is, the differences between an artist run space and galleries, I know they can be so similar yet so vast in a lot of ways. I think also an artist run space, I find, has a better understanding of what it's like to be an artist, and therefore it feels as if it's a little bit more organic when you're working with someone that, you know, maybe is having their first show, and you to explain what a consignment agreement is, or whether you're going to have a consignment agreement, or you know, how the artists can meet the needs of another artist by leveling their expectations.
Yeah.
There is a question actually that I just saw here from Patricia. She was asking, do you have any overarching vision for the work that you're creating when you're creating the folds, or does it emerge when you install it? Which I think you addressed a little.
Oh, I see. So the overall form of the installation. No, I don't. You know, yeah, no, I don't. I kind of just like plunk one down in the middle of the wall, and I usually just sort of start stretching out from there. Excuse me. I mean, they generally will be some sort of like, it'll generally be some sort of like tessellation of some sorts, and sometimes that pattern will break a little bit, but besides that, there's no real like overarching vision. You know, when I first was doing them, like I recognized that I was making like them into like rectangular shapes. And I was like, oh God, I'm such a like a painter. But like, so more recently, they've been like more like they've been a little more organic, and they don't sort of like just fill that rectangle anymore.
Definitely. And, you know, say for instance, someone wanted to purchase your work, you create for a fee or whatever, you know, that installation, you install it into a space. And so there's that performance aspect again, but then there's also the craft of you making it elsewhere, and then the presentation of it. But like, is that how you would sell the object, or how do you work out sales, Alex?
Right. So with the installations, it's kind of like you're buying like a performance of that piece.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't own the actual piece, but you would have that performance, and and then the fee is kind of like basically based on like the square footage, right? So a 10 by 20 foot installation is going to cost a lot more than like a 4 by 8 foot installation. So that's how it works for those.
Yeah, and then the smaller, more sculptural works, those are standalone, so that's like a different price point as well, correct?
Yeah, so those are more like kind of traditional art objects where you just buy it, and then that's the only one in existence, so you would get that.
Yeah. So some of the work you have in Artfare right now kind of runs the gamut of some smaller works, some larger works.
Right.
Very nice. Very cool. Are you going to put any of the sculptural ones on Artfare anytime soon?
Oh yeah, I should. I need to. All of my stuff is in storage, like including my camera and lights. So I need to.
Oh gosh.
I need to document a lot of these first. But yeah, then I probably will. And then I'll
Definitely.
have to like update my location tag on Artfare.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, you gotta get the little map out there. You move
Yeah.
from Brooklyn to LA area. The uh oh goodness, I was gonna ask about the the sale you just did on some of these newer works that you donated sales to causes for Black Lives Matter, and you were selling them off Instagram. How did you feel about that? How did that work for you?
I think it worked out well. I mean, I honestly, it's like I just wanted to get rid of a lot of stuff so I didn't have to ship it to California. So because of that, like I just decided to just say like, hey, you know what, just like pay whatever you want and it's yours. Add $20 for shipping. And so it was, I felt like it was great because some people were able to buy my work that would never be able to afford it otherwise.
Yeah.
And so it was really great to be able to sell to like a lot of like emerging artists or like people that would just be, it would just be inaccessible to otherwise. And they're kind of doing me the favor by like getting rid of the work for me. Like I'd rather it be somewhere than like have to ship it and then it'll just sit in my studio there.
Right.
Yes, so I think it worked out well. And it was it's pretty easy to do. I just like threw up the images and then would just
Yeah.
delete them as they got sold. Last year I did like another Instagram sale, and that one was like more like that one was like to the highest bidder. So that was a little more work, but that worked out well, and that was a fundraiser specifically for Raices and the ACLU. So like all proceeds from that were split between them, and I didn't take anything. This time I took 50% and I gave the other 50% to Black Lives Matter.
That's amazing. Thank you. I've always appreciated that in your work too. I mean, the work may not seem like it's an activist stance of, that it's not as glaringly in your face activist, but your whole practice always has been, which I've always appreciated. So thank you. I was wondering if anyone had any other questions. I've been talking and listening and learning a little bit more about TSA, which is great to know more about your practice as well. And we still got some folks on here. And if you'd like to ask a question, please do so through chat. That's it's my backyard.
Yes, I'm going to involve myself with TSA LA. Yeah, so I'll be connecting with that group once I get out there more. I mean, I'm already connected with them like virtually, but yeah, I'll be working with that group more locally. But I'll still sort of like my role at TSA is kind of like the glue that holds everything together from like just spreading apart. Or also like I'm the guy in the middle when you get drawn and quartered and the horses go off in different directions. So that's kind of my role, just keeping it from dissipating into space.
You're the wrangler.
Yeah.
It's not your first rodeo.
Yeah.
Well, I really wish you the very best in your move, and I'm excited to possibly see you in LA if we ever get out there. My partner's dad lives in LA,
Oh,
actually.
nice.
La Cañada.
Oh, okay, that's not far.
which is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from Pasadena.
Yeah.
Those
Nice.
mountains over there are really gorgeous. They have had fires, but right now there are none, so that's a good thing. I'm just looking to see if anyone has any other questions. I'm just kind of closing up here. I don't know, Alex, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I don't know, not really. I think we covered a lot of ground.
A lot of ground.
I think my work was. Oh,
go
hi
ahead.
Mel, how's it going? I don't know if it'll change, but I don't know if I'll be able to work large scale for a little bit until I get like a studio situation set up. I think the light will be great. I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. Who knows? It's hard to know. I'm excited to have. I'll definitely have like a bigger studio, I think, out there, which will be nice. But I think really the bigger change is having Althea right now, our second daughter, and like I think that's gonna really, I'm gonna be in parenting mode for the next couple years, I think, especially as the pandemic drags on, and so I think that's going to be my focus mostly.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're moving towards fall and being indoors more through the winter, you're not going to have to deal with the winter months in New York. Very lucky.
Yeah, winter will be pretty sweet. Sorry.
Well, I am just delighted to talk to you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this and telling us more about your practice and giving us really great insights on your curatorial practice as well. And I really wish you the very best in your move. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really fun. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks everybody for coming.
Yes. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.